During the 12-month period, all such expenses in excess of $500 to the maximum of $5,000 will be paid by the town. The town shall not be responsible for any such expenses caused by misuse, negligence, or willful misconduct in the use of the well and infrastructure. Any expenses in excess of $5,000 shall be the responsibility of the owner. Number 7, the town, at the town's sole cost and expense, the town will restore the property to the condition it was in prior to the construction of the well for damages caused by or due to construction. Such restoration shall include reseeding, sodding of disturbed lawns, and repairs to damaged driveways or walkways. All charges and expenses incurred in the designing, permitting, construction, installation of the well shall be paid by the town. The town shall be responsible for any damage or injury caused during the installation of the well. Any warranties provided by the contractor for the well and its infrastructure shall be assigned by the town to the owner after the 12 months of the acceptance date. So there's an extended warranty on the well. The town will maintain that warranty for the first 12 months. After that, it's turned over to the owner. For the 12-month period after the acceptance date, the town will address any complaints of owner regarding the quality of the water as in hereafter set forth. What the health department does is they issue a certificate of potability. Once they receive all the testing, once it meets or exceeds their standards, they issue a certificate of potability, which means, which the owner will then get. Page 6, the town shall indemnify owner from all future legal requirement imposed by the federal government, any of its agencies or departments, or the Department of Environment for the state of Maryland, to remove any or all of the abandoned service lines or infrastructure. If for the off chance that the federal government or the state would come in and say that the line on this, on Mr. Saxon's property needs to be removed, it would fall to the town's responsibility to do it. That's never happened. Once we have many abandoned lines in town, and we've never been required to remove them. Number 12 on page 7, in the event after all reasonable efforts have been made and undertaken, the water supply well does not and will not provide an adequate supply of potable water to the property, and that no well can be drilled on the property to satisfy the requirements of this agreement, then at the sole discretion of the town, this agreement shall be null, void, unenforceable, and of no further effect, and the parties shall be placed in the same position they were in prior to the execution of this agreement. Jump down to number 15. Once the well is installed and operational, the town shall relinquish and terminate any easements which it has or had as part of the 8-inch water service lines, and the town supplying water to the owner of the property. And that's Mr. Saxon's agreement. Any questions?
I have a correction. I met with Mr. Saxon and the staff, not Mr. Abrams. I apologize. I didn't mean, sorry.
Any questions for staff on this agreement? Commissioner O'Donnell, let me get down on that.
I'll yield to Commissioner Buckman.
Okay.
Oh, it's not a big deal. I read and reread paragraph 6. Can you summarize that for me?
Paragraph 6. So basically what paragraph 6 says is if there are any out-of-pocket expenses for repairs, maintenance, upkeep of the well for the first 12 months, after the well's been turned over, after everybody's agreed, Frederick County's agreed, the contractors agreed, the town's agreed that this is your final product, and there's an acceptance date. So say today's your acceptance date. From here, for 12 months after today, if there are any expenses related to any repairs or maintenance.
Outside of the warranty?
Outside of the warranty, correct. Anything out of pocket, the owner can pay up to $500, will be Mr. Saxon's responsibility. Anything higher than $500 up to $5,000 would be the town's responsibility. If it exceeds $5,000, then it would go over to the owner. After those 12 months, the owner then is responsible for everything.
Any other questions? Mr. Rhodes?
No, you do.
O'Donnell?
Okay, thank you. Fair enough. So for absolute clarity, the town's paying for the well, the electrical wiring, property repair, possibly a UV light for cleaning the water,
Correct.
for treating the water.
Right.
Okay. What is the total possible expense related? What is our maximum expenditure that we've slated for this at this time, or have we?
The
other than what we-
$11,655.
Okay, other than what the town has set up, so we're not on the hook beyond that based on what the board agreed to preceding this?
Well, the board agreed to a much higher.
Correct.
A higher amount. Obviously, could possibly be unforeseen circumstances that might arise, during this project. So the bid, the estimate that we have, including the well drilling, the electrical work, the permitting, the lab testing, everything that we've estimated comes up to $11,655. If there's unforeseen circumstances, then obviously it's gonna cost more than that.
Okay, and, thank you. And going to item 12, I'm on page 7. And in the final line, it concludes with, where is this? This agreement shall be null, void, unenforceable, and of no further effect, and the parties shall be placed in the same position they were in prior to the execution of this agreement. Does that mean, therefore, we will return to supplying water to this property?
Probably until we can find another solution.
Okay, all right, so that would be our
Right, we
obligation.
would, if
Okay.
for some reason the well cannot,
Yield
you
water,
can't meet
sure.
the requirements in this paragraph 12, we're gonna have to come up with another solution.
Okay, great, thank you.
Commissioner Ritz?
I guess mine's more of a comment. Without looking at the properties, maybe there's a little difference, where they are. Maybe one's up higher than the other. I don't know. To me, I like the first agreement better. There's a lot of less to it. It's like, here's the money, have at it, and we're done. I guess there's no way to write into this, to revise this, to somehow incorporate our original cap.
Not in the agreement. You can't put a money cap on the agreement.
You could reject the contract, that would be your personal choice on our vote.
What?
We've had, yeah, I mean, this has been going on. First meeting with them started in March of 2018 to try to get this resolved.
I'm not trying to be cynical. It just, you never know what could happen. It could be a clean process, and then again, it might not. I hope it wouldn't come to that.
Right. I mean, if there's gonna be exorbitant expenses, and obviously that exceed what the cap the board originally set, the staff and myself are gonna come back for authorization.
I have a question.
Is
But,
this contract binding? Would we be allowed to amend the contract if there was a huge problem?
No.
Yeah.
I have
I
a
mean, the
question.
point is, we're kind of in between a rock and a hard place. We have an 8-inch mountain water line that, to fully repair that line so we can guarantee service, you're talking about, close to $1 million to service one resident. Discussion with John Clapp, per the state of Maryland, once you start servicing somebody with water, you have to make every effort to make sure that you can supply them with equal to what they're already receiving. So, we tried the buyout with everybody. Fortunately, we were able to get one that agreed to the buyout. Mr. Saxon is not interested in the buyout at all. I think we could be forced to do the well. If we just washed our hands from it and the 8-inch line deteriorates and he does not have any water, I think we would be forced to have to supply him with a well anyway.
I have a question. What was our original money that we had put aside for this? Do you remember?
I do not,
I think it
and I
was
should have had that number
It was a
with me.
25, it was 20 or 25, does anybody remember?
I think it was 25,000
If it
per
was
residence.
if it was to exceed 25, we were to be informed.
Okay, right now it's 11.
11,655,
If the line breaks, right now he's still on the 8-inch line.
yes.
If it freezes and breaks this winter, it'll
He has no
probably
water.
cost, and it'll probably cost more to fix it
Yes.
than what the well
Definitely.
is.
I think it's important to remember that the town a long time ago bought a water company that's that service water to these properties and also to the town, and that's how we got in this.
Right.
A long time ago. And we're trying to do the best to get out equitably with the people there. They had our town water, and we're want to guarantee them that they have potable water as prescribed by the Frederick County. So that's what we're
I
replacing.
agree.
We're doing the right thing,
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree. The new well, once it goes online, everything's been approved by everybody, should not have any problems. I mean, brand new wells don't usually break down in the
There's a
first year they're
warranty.
on, and there's a warranty on it. So, I don't have,
I lived on well water, and look how I turned out.
yeah,
Scary, isn't
so
it?
did I. But, it is a very, way less a cost to pay the $11,000 for a new well than it is to pay the $1 million for a new line, for just one resident. This is just gonna serve one person
That's right.
or one property. That's my opinion. So, I need a motion to accept agreement number 2 for Mr. Saxon's property for a new well.
I'll make a motion to accept the agreement for the Saxton well as presented.
Motion has been made by Commissioner Buckman. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Motion's been seconded by Commissioner Blanchard. Is there any further discussion by anyone? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any nays?
Nay, and only because I have some reservation, not because I do not want this situation to be fixed.
Oh, motion carries 4-1.
That's-
Alrighty, that takes care of the agreements. What's
Mr.
next?
President,
Yes.
is that gentleman here with conjunction of that, or
What is it?
you were here for?
These
For
for something
trails.
else. I think it's
Fellas,
for
we're
the
getting to it.
trailers.
Okay, I'm sorry.
They're here for trails. Or trailers. Trails stuck in my mind.
For both, I think.
Okay, the next one is, the fourth agenda item is revised ethics procedures for consideration. Town planner?
In a nutshell, we brought to the board on May 7th of 2018 an initial presentation on the ethics code and the appeals procedure to the board. In August 1st, 2018, the Ethics Commission met to review the complaint procedures. In October 1st, 2018, we brought a review of the ethics complaint procedures as proposed by the Ethics Commission. In a nutshell, the Ethics Commission did not recommend any changes to the procedures. They recommended the adjudicatory hearing remain private, and they agreed to provide a visual flow chart for the complaint process. Commissioner Buckman requested parallel lettering get added to the flow chart that corresponds with the lettering in the written procedures. And Commissioner O'Donnell requested the ethics violation complaint form add a note that the town can provide notary services under the instruction section. The board requested town staff make the requested changes and then bring this back to you. On the following pages, you will see the procedures for complaints, Ethics Commission rules of procedure for complaints and advisory opinions. There was no changes to those procedures. On page 21, you'll see the updated flow chart with the changes that was requested by Commissioner Buckman. And then on page 23, the instructions related to the ethics violation complaint form. Number 6, sign the form and have a notary sign date and note the date their commission expires. Please note the town can provide notary services. If possibly, please call ahead to assure staff availability. So staff made the changes that were requested by the board on the procedures and for the flow chart. So the staff's looking for approval of the procedures and flow chart and form.
Okay, so you need a motion to accept it?
I do.
I need a motion to accept the Town Ethics Commission, rules and, procedures for, their ethics procedures?
I'll make
Revised
Any-
ones?
Mr. Speaker, may I ask
Commissioner,
just a
I
quick
was
question?
gonna get to, and then have
Okay.
discussion. Can we
Okay.
do that?
Sure. Sounds good.
I have a motion first and the second, and then we'll go into discussion. Is there a motion for the, ethics procedures?
I'll make a motion to accept the Ethics Commission rules of procedure for complaints and advisory opinions as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Ritz, second by Commissioner O'Donnell. Okay, now we're open to discussion. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes, sir. Actually, just a simple question for staff. So I'm sort of opening discussion up to staff beyond the board. That's what I was a little worried about. Staff, quickly, sorry. This form, the ethics violation complaint form, will this be available as a public document that they could download on from the website?
I believe it is located, if it's not located, but I believe that it already is, under the Forms tab on the website.
Okay.
I believe this is already there. If it is not, we can add it. It is there.
Terrific. Okay, thank you. The only reason I ask is because I've seen people have issues in front of notaries, and if it fails, the notary's sniff test, basically they need to see the signature as opposed to bringing it in signed, then the notary has
Right.
to see it all happen again. So, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Discussion? Anybody? Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes,
Oh.
Mr. Mayor.
I just want to thank the board for everybody who went to the open meetings to catch up on that and get in the right position. Thank you all for doing it. We never know when we're, it's just well that everybody did. Thank you. Thank you.
Alrighty. Addendum item number 5. Or 6.
5 has
President-
been postponed.
No, 5's been
State
postponed. Okay.
has not gotten back to us.
6 is a presentation of the trailers related to the B2 zoning for discussion.
Okay, Mr. President, so at the last meeting of the Board of Commissioners, you all agreed to allow the use of trailers, more specifically sea containers, in the industrial zone. The board tasked us to find a way for businesses in the commercial zoning districts to be able to use the storage trailers while at the same time ensuring proper covering from neighboring residential zoning districts. So the first thing that popped in my head, the easiest way would be to use a fence. However, we're in a special circumstance here. Quality Tire, they have a large tractor trailer parked behind their facility for a very good reason, but it's over the 6-foot threshold. Anything over 6 feet, Frederick County will not approve. It has to have special supports and everything else, and they just will not do it because of wind and other hazards. So the next best thing I could think of would be landscaping. So I'll read some changes that I thought that would be necessary and what the mayor and Kathy also thought would be a good fix for this. So Quality Tire and other businesses would not lose their businesses over this specific reason. So you can see 1524-020 D2. A trailer may be used as a storage shed in commercial or industrial zones if it is not visible from any adjoining residential area, or if the property owner provides landscaping that adheres to the following requirements. A. Landscaping will be installed and maintained to screen the trailer so as not to be visible from other residential or business properties within any residential or village zoning districts or from roads within any residential or village zoning districts, provided, however, that these visibility requirements shall not be applicable for the first 12 months while the trees grow to maturity. B, minimum screening, 1 shade tree / deciduous tree per 30 linear feet and 1 evergreen tree per 10 linear feet. C, evergreen trees must have a minimum 5-foot height at the time of planting. D, shade deciduous trees must have a minimum 2-inch caliber and 6-foot height at the time of planting. E, All screening materials and landscaping shall not encroach upon the adjoining property line at full maturity. And F, all plantings shall be performed in conformance with good nursery and landscaping practices. So if the board would agree to that, basically the one issue that needs to be addressed is in D2A. So does the board agree that 12 months would be enough time? Excuse me. The board will have to determine how much time to give a person to have the trees grow up to a height that will screen the trailer. Alternatively, they can also simply provide that the trees come first, and when they reach a certain height to be an effective screen, then the person can bring in a trailer. So is the board comfortable with allowing a 12-month frame while the trees are still small for the neighbors to be able to view the trailer?
I'll add real quick. This is based off conversations with John Clapp. We reached out to him to find solutions, and this is what he and Zach came up with, and that's where the time limits have come in. But just so you know that he's had his input on this as well.
Did we contact
Mr.
an
Buckman.
arborist to determine what type of tree would grow in an effective amount in a 12-month period?
We do not, but evergreen trees, they grow very fast from my experience. And
So what if we put that agreement in, and in that 12 months, they don't reach the intended height? Then what do we do?
then they would have to remove the trailer until it's effectively screened.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Also, another thing, I added both the general and neighborhood commercial. I didn't know if that would be comfortable for everybody, but I wanted a fair for all businesses.
Right.
Mr. President.
So we're-
Mr. Ritz.
I think, I mean, not to discredit the work that you put into it, Mr. Clapp put into it, I think this is a bit overkill. And the reason I say that, I don't want this to apply to any B2. I think the only property that we're really looking at was Quality Tire, which we can't spot zone. I don't want to see any trailers in B2, personally.
Do it.
This was just for industrial area. And I certainly don't want Quality Tire to have to spend money to put in some trees just to cover up a trailer. I think the other part we were looking at, we were going to try to address was the term adjoining. Yes, the trailer can be seen from Emmett Gardens. However, there is a bit of conservation land in between. So the only other houses that you might be able to see the trailer from would be 500 East Main Street, Mr. Sloan's residence, and those houses at the ends of East Lincoln Avenue. I know this is just for discussion tonight. We're not voting for it's not for consideration. So I don't know if we want to bring it when it comes back for vote, if we need to bring those individuals in. But personally, I don't want to see any trailers in the rest of B2 or B1.
Then unfortunately you can't do it. That's the dilemma, and that's why we reached out to Mr. Clapp to find any solution that he might have.
Well, we
and
could do it
not
if we let the trailer stay on that property.
they're in the B2. What you do for one in B2, you have to do for all in B2.
Then we need to remove the allowment for B2 and let the trailer at Quality Tire, even though it is in B2.
We can't,
Can't
do that.
Why can't we do that? That's
Because you have
spot
to
zoning.
enforce the code across the board and be fair to anybody that's in B2. How can you let one trailer in B2 and then I come along in
How
my
many
business and I can't have my trailer on B2?
How many trailers are in B2 right now?
I don't know, but you opened the door for it
There are no trailers in B2.
right now. But this is where we're the problem. Something that was decided by the board 5-6 years ago is finally coming to a head. You don't know what decision you make today might affect the future. If I have my business and I see that
Exactly.
B2 has a trailer, then I might want mine now. I want to
Exactly.
throw a
And if
trailer
we
up on
pa-
mine
if we
because I can.
pass this ordinance, it's going to cause a lot of other problems in the future. People complaining of trailers, I can still see it and everything, so
Mr. Buckman.
I don't want to go down that route.
We have that conservation area, and I know that our green team's always looking for opportunities to plant trees, why can't we plant trees in that conservation area, which would eliminate,
We don't own the property.
we don't own it?
No, that's not our property.
Oh.
Right.
No,
So, I mean, I'm not trying to shoot down anybody's idea. I certainly want Quality Tire here. I want to make it work for them, but, you know, we're bound by certain parameters also.
But,
So,
I do have a question. Quality Tire's trailer is not a storage trailer for them, it is a recycle trailer. It is a recycle. Did you contact any of the tire places in Frederick County to see what they do with their recycling trailers?
No, but
It's a tagged licensed trailer, which once it's full, like our blue recycle bins, they come and dump it and bring another one
correct.
to
And
take its
actually, it has a
place.
truck attached to it now.
Right, but it's still a trailer
Right.
as defined in the code, so that's why we're in a
But it
predicament.
has a truck attached to it now.
only, I think, I saw a truck attached to it, but it's not one continuously attached to it. I think they bring in a truck attached to it. I mean, you have the owner here, you can ask him a question. I think they attach to it to remove it and to bring it back in. It's not one that sits there permanently. So,
Did you guys want to?
He signed up to talk. Ron, did you want to come up here and talk?
it's illegal.
Ron Walter, 17650 Creamery Road. It is a recycling trailer, and I understand if you let one person have a trailer, you got to let everybody have a trailer. If anybody else has that large a need for recycling that's required by the state, then they should probably be allowed to have a trailer too. And it's hard to see on the map, but it shows a little square, and that is not Quality Tire's building. That is our entire lot. Everything around us belongs to somebody else. The glass company owns towards Main Street, and behind us, it's not just that little strip. There's, I think, like 12 acres back there behind us that separates us from all the residential areas.
Can we get the map?
where you
Did
going?
it overheat?
It overheated.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Timing. Okay.
I would like to see, because there's got to be something in the code for down closer to Frederick. People, all tire places recycle, it's required. What are they doing that we're not doing? Why is this a conundrum for us?
Because their code probably is different. Yeah, each municipality, each town, each city has their own code.
Mentioned Frederick wouldn't allow it.
But
The fence.
Fence.
So if the easiest way would be to have a fence, a 6-foot fence. But however, these trailers, I can't speak to how tall they are, but I know they're over
At
6
least
feet.
13 feet
Right.
or
Yeah, they're
higher.
13.
And you cannot get a 13-foot fence by Frederick County.
Can the recycling company somehow drop it down so it's not so tall? Is that the problem?
If it would be a roll-off trailer, staff
They
wouldn't have
do
any
that? Could
problems
you
with
ask
a
them?
fence.
They won't do that because then it leaves the tires open and they get filled.
Yeah, they get filled with
We're not going to be
water.
able to cover that trailer for the
No, I mean,
winter.
just lower it so it's not, it's still covered, right?
You're saying two different things.
I am.
You're talking about a different type of trailer that is covered, and staff had just mentioned a roll-off, which is a mosquito
dumpster.
issue. Right, a dumpster. So, can I ask,
Yeah.
do you mind? So I think what Commissioner Buckman is asking, and if I'm wrong, correct
Mm-hmm.
me, please, is there an option for a different type of trailer that is smaller than the semi-type you have right now? Like, does your recycler offer you a different size option?
No.
Okay. Did I come to close what you were looking at?
I was thinking more of like a shipping looking kind of, they set right on the ground.
Like a pod?
Yeah, but bigger, I mean,
Sure.
so it's not so tall.
Yeah.
Just like at the other industrial
We're not
zones.
recreating the wheel. Someone else has dealt with this before. What are other people doing?
They use a trailer just like we use. The company that,
Other alternative?
not that we've been able to find.
That might be a difference. So, Mr. President,
Mr. Mayor?
may I speak? Or-
Yes.
Okay, that may be in a different zone, and they're allowed to do that. This is just one of
That
these
one's a
quagmire. This thing was passed in 2010 or something like that to allow it, to say it wasn't allowed. But there is a variety of tree called a Leland cypress, and it's a coniferous tree, and that's what you're saying it has to be. they grow about 3.5 feet a year. They're the big ones you see. We have them around here. I think that could take care of covering that up. And if anybody in a B2 ever had to have one of those, then they've got to either do the fence or they've got to do the trees.
And they have to
But
have
the
space
Leland,
for the
Cy-
trees
Leland
and-
cypress, we put them out. Maybe it's 3 to 4 or 5 feet a year. They get huge. They get to be monstrous trees. And if you plant them in back of your property up along that line, and I think that would cure the problem. I would.
So how many feet apart would the trees have to be?
They get big. I
So-
mean, they get,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about real fast.
Mr. President, the minimum screening would be 1 shade/deciduous tree per 30 linear feet and 1 evergreen tree per 10 linear feet, enough to cover the full trailer.
Your back of your property is
What?
not more than 100 feet, I don't think, is it?
you'll allow deciduous trees?
Correct.
Okay.
Both. A mixture of both.
Do you have a problem with planting trees?
I don't know. We don't own the property. Mr. Mort still does.
Oh.
Okay.
Yes,
Bob?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, so they can't plant the trees because it belongs to somebody else. You just bought the business.
Yes,
He owns the building.
yes.
Would you, can I ask a question?
Yeah, Mr. Blanchard.
Would you be in consideration to talk to the owner about whether or not this would be an option?
I could talk to him. What I'm reading here, it still says not, as long as it's not visible from any adjoining residential properties, and there are no adjoining residential
Yeah, we
properties
are
to
the
us.
corner. Yeah.
Adjoining being the key word,
Yes,
because there's a conservation property.
and there's also, I believe it's town of Emmitsburg's property that's there. It doesn't show on the map who owns it. Beside us, beside the trailer, belongs to
Really
Emmitsburg
nice,
Glass.
But I didn't know that either.
Yeah. It doesn't show a whole lot.
Who does own that conservation?
Emmitsburg Glass owns the property in between.
Yeah, part of, yes. I have a small one, if anyone would like to see it.
And the house at 500 East Main Street is, you cannot see your property from it because they have evergreens that cover their whole back end of their property, so you can't even
Okay.
see through it.
It doesn't seem like they have an obligation to plant because they don't adjoin properties that have a direct sight line
Yeah.
due to the types of screening that exists. Now, I would ask you still have that conversation with the property owner, Mr. Morton. I could guess what he's going to say, but
Yeah.
I can speculate.
Oh, yeah, we all know him.
But nevertheless, there's no unscreened adjoining property.
Correct.
So I think they're in the clear. So I don't know that they would have an obligation.
That's what I was thinking.
Right, and that's what you had brought up in the last meeting. So that adjoining piece, that language kind of opens the door that there's not an obligation here, as I see it.
Plant a tree.
There's,
But
correct.
there is an obligation to pass some code change allowing for trailers in this zone.
I think there would be, well,
Right now, they're not allowed, correct?
I'm sorry?
There's no trailers allowed in B2.
Correct.
so that's our default. That would be our baseline if we were to change this.
And then any B2, there couldn't be a trailer in the view of an adjoining property, which would limit that zone from having trailers.
Correct.
This is one that's very isolated and it's not adjoining any properties.
But we have to be careful we're not spot zoning. We have to blanket.
No, it's not.
Okay,
It's
okay.
saying that B2 is allowed trailers, but it can't be within the sight of
Correct.
an adjoining property,
Residential.
residential.
Oh, there we go.
It's already in
Is
there.
there any, Mr. Woods?
Yeah.
I agree with Ms. Willetts. I'm not trying to dodge that issue that, we can't, you got to enforce it, even though we overlooked it for how many years. But I guess the way it's written for other potential businesses in commercial, they could have a trailer. As far as I know, there are no trailers in such areas right now.
There are.
There are?
I've driven around town.
And so even the
In B2?
language in here is still good for other potential, but it wouldn't affect you because there's no adjoining.
Correct.
I'll let staff.
So,
As you can see up there, just say for example the new Silo Hill project, they want to put in a couple trailers. It's adjoining to the Silo Hill development. So
Correct.
if they wanted to put a trailer there, yeah.
Then they'd have to have the space to provide for a huge tree. And if they didn't have the space, then they couldn't have the trailer.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So if another B2 property wanted a trailer, the wording in here would say they would have to have this huge tree, and their property would have to accommodate a huge tree,
For screening, correct.
which would prohibit a lot of people from having trailers in B2.
Usually the properties in the B2, as you can see, they're pretty large properties. I don't think it would inhibit the use of a trailer. But that's speculative.
And all B2s, what kind of properties are B2? There's like the Dollar General.
It's the dark red
The-
there.
all red. All the red.
Yeah, I'm just trying to identify, because I'm not as spatial as men are. What property, the McDonald's and the gas station, is that what we're looking at?
It's right past the food bank. So anything on that road
Oh, I
past the
see.
food
I'm
bank.
colorblind, so, you know.
We all have our. I also don't want to see Emmitsburg lined with trailers, but
No.
they're not. But we still have to consider. This is.
How would since they aren't visible from residential, or aren't connected, or what's the language?
Adjoining.
They're not adjoining. How would that be? How do we get by that?
Well, they're not adjoining. I mean, with the language it says in there, it says adjoining. It is visible from Emmett Gardens, and it is visible from, I'm being told, maybe or maybe not from 500 East. But the way the language reads, it does say adjoining. I don't know. I mean, that's technical.
It's really if you want to allow residents to see the trailers. That's what it comes down to.
It doesn't say
Are you
that.
okay with letting them see it? Adjoining or not?
Right.
No one's ever complained about the trailer.
Well, I mean, like I said, the houses at the end of East Lincoln that face that way technically could probably see it, but are they real? They're not adjoining.
Right.
Correct.
So I don't know how we would get. Do we accept this as it is, or
What if we were to accept it as it is, keeping adjoining, and also allow, well, no, just
Just keeping adjoining.
keep it as is with adjoining. And I don't know that at this time we have to address the screening unless we feel that that's a necessary step. I mean, proactively, there might be value to it to protect the residential view, like for a future development, for example, across the road, or something to change. But beyond that, right now, other than the trailer being on the property, there's a status quo with that adjoining thing that we could allow. I mean, it is, so we just leave it as is. The only variable is the trailer piece. And I think that's covered with the language as it's presented.
So all B2 property in the future can have a trailer.
no?
We're not saying that yet.
I'm not saying that yet.
The key word's
Maybe
adjoining.
imply it.
So
Adjoining.
yeah.
So if the keyword adjoining is in with the things, then he does not need to put the trees in.
Correct.
Correct.
However, is the board comfortable with people in Emmett Gardens and everything else. That's the question with seeing it. But I completely understand your point, and it's fair.
I don't think anybody in Emmett Gardens ever noticed it.
No one cares about this trailer, but I guess the board now is saying, what if everyone like starts getting trailers in B2? Then that's a problem. It's never happened.
That is a problem. I agree.
Because it's never been allowed in B2, so you couldn't,
And you can't consider each B2 property by having
Oh.
someone come to,
I mean, I could be wrong. Emmett Gardens, yes, you can see it. Is it adjoining? That's
not so sorry.
interpretation, I
technically
suppose.
it's
but
not.
but have there been any complaints in the past? How many years that trailer's been there?
Not that I'm aware of in the 5 years,
There hasn't been any since I've been here, and that's 21 years.
so.
I don't even know why it's
I
not
don't
part of the
think, I
industrial
don't think
zone,
your quality
honestly.
tire's the actual question here. It's gonna be the others in the B2,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
area.
As long as we can ensure that everything can just stay status quo right now, and then ensuring that in the future we don't have a pop-up of trailers, then I'm happy.
I have a question.
Ms. Buckman,
Might be ridiculous. Are we able to, sorry, I'm tired. Are we able to say trailers explicitly used for recycling purposes are permissible in B2?
I don't, yeah.
Because
don't
we're
think
a
so.
green town, why not?
I don't think so, because
Can we ask?
then you're, me personally, I see it as you're choosing one business over another. So you recycle, you can have your trailer, but because you don't recycle, you can't. I think if you're gonna allow trailers in B2, then you gotta let,
But it's different.
all B2 trailers.
Storage trailers are different than recycling trailers.
not, that's no. I mean, he's storing tires to be recycled. It's still being used for storage. He could put them in, I could have stuff that's going to be recycled that I have in my shed. I mean, it is what it is. It is the storage trailer that he's using for recycling. And it's a necessary trailer. It's a necessary way for him to do business. I get that. I don't think you want to specify what trailers you want and what trailers you don't want. I think that makes it, one, it's very difficult for your staff to enforce. What we're going to do, go out and look in every single trailer to see whether
Yeah.
or not you have recyclable materials or you don't have recyclable materials. I mean, I think
Creative, though.
Commissioner O'Donnell has come up with the most reasonable solution here. The whole board has, is we keep it as adjoining. It doesn't affect quality tire then, because technically it's not adjoining. And that I don't know. I mean,
We wash our hands.
I do want to. No.
I mean,
Yeah,
Could
I
we-
don't know.
Can we put other language like limit to one? Just so, I mean, I
Well,
don't
you can
think,
do what you
I don't
wanna do.
think someone's gonna come in and bring 10 trailers in, but
well, if you look where the other B2 is, they're all against, most of them aren't residential, I believe.
I think you leave it as it is. You're looking at the properties across on 15 that are B2 for potential future development. I don't know that you want to limit to one.
right, for that, right.
You can always modify this in the future. You can amend it in the future if you would like.
Mr.
Again,
President.
this isn't in stone, so.
Mr. Mayor,
Well, thank you very much. I just don't, we just got in a situation where we cleared up something on water from 50 years ago, and this was done in, 10 years ago that this decision was made, not to have, trailers. And it's, just be careful, it's just not kicking the can down, solve the problem tonight. So we don't have to come back and somebody scratching their head in 10 years from when we're here.
What would you suggest? Do you go with
I think
what-
the only way out of it is that we've had a business here, it's been in business for a very long time, very reputable business. They've had this trailer. No one said anything to them, even though we had the law in place since 2010 or something like that. And, I won't call it a law ordinance. And to come back and then say it's very hard on these businesses in this day and age to make things go. I would just go with some kind of screening, and if it ever happens in B2, again, then you gotta have to have screening, and limit it to one. Like you say, I mean, we have up at the end of that court, the industrial court, they park 10 or 15,
Right, but
10 or 15 of these
that's
things.
industrial though, yeah, so that's not a big deal.
That's all, that's whatever you want to do, but don't do another water thing either.
Right.
No,
Let's get it solved tonight.
Okay, is there gonna be a motion to accept the,
Can I?
Should we put in the verbiage, limit to one, as the mayor suggested, or
it's up to you guys.
It does say a trailer. It is singular, so I don't know.
it's already there?
It does say a trailer.
No, I don't think you said something wrong.
Just chime in, go ahead, what was your point?
No, I agree with Mr. Mayor. I was just said it
I
different.
agree too.
No,
And it already says a trailer, so that is singular.
Right now, they're not allowed at all in B2. So we
listen,
have to change something to allow it, or,
I want
not
to just
too well.
check my comments with the staff for a minute.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kathy, do you have something that, is that too far reaching, or,
I think you should leave it as is for now.
okay?
And if you foresee that you want to change it, we can. I just think
leave it as it's written now?
I would.
I agree.
I agree with Kathy also.
I agree. The planner and the town manager agree, so
You
do
guys
I.
agree, I'm sure.
Yes.
I just agree.
If there's no more discussion,
Wait, can I
we
just
don't
add
do-
one thing? Just to make sure, it says discussion. So I don't know, we can't vote on it tonight, can we?
Correct.
Because it doesn't say for consideration.
Correct. We made it discussion because
Yeah.
we were going to come back
So
with
you-
options,
That's all right.
thinking that after discussing it with the town attorney, we would have options. Unfortunately, we don't have options, but since it was set as presentation for discussion, you can't vote on it.
Okay, we got
But
that.
Just move it to
Quality
next.
Tire has been allowed to continue to do business as usual. It's not going to affect them
Okay.
if it's not passed tonight.
So we just-
Because we're not enforcing anything. They're continuing on.
do we have room to put it on the agenda for next month?
So I'll just say, if everything we discussed this evening stays, and this is going to be presented to us as
Is.
is for
Right, there'll be no
for
changes
next
to it.
for January,
Yeah,
then
okay, yes, yes.
I'm ready to vote.
I feel good about it. In January,
Yes.
you're ready to vote.
I'm ready to vote
Yeah.
in January.
Put
I'll
on
be
the
ready to
agenda as
vote in
vote, yeah.
January also.
All right. So when we come back to this in January, we won't have 2-hour discussion.
Yes.
I will have nothing
Okay.
to add that night,
Okay.
except
Mr.
for my
Walker.
vote.
I need
We're
a
gonna
vote
put it
for-
on January's agenda. Would you like to come back then?
Thank you all for your help.
Okay.
Thank you, guys,
Thank you for coming in,
and
both of
being
you.
patient. All right.
Let me see.
Can let him know that.
Oh, update board.
Update, for the Board of Recreational Trails Program. Grant requests. Take over, or oversee. Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes, sir, thank you. Hey, thank you. I supplied a packet tonight for your consideration with some information there. I had hoped to have it go out with the town agenda, which usually goes out Thursday. It went out a day early, so I apologize that I didn't join you on that. But I'm asking the board to give consideration to having town staff manage the recreational trail program grant that was initially assigned to the Trail Conservancy and has now been assigned to the town through some heavy lifting. And it would allow the town to have a $40,000 trail grant to enhance the trails on the mountain. Now, I've provided option A and B, neither of which I'm married to, but I'd like to turn it over to staff and the mayor, as I know they have some considerations. They're not keen on the idea, so I'd like to give them the opportunity to just, provide their recommendation to you related to this.
How about we go with town staff first?
All right, as Commissioner Donald said, he and I met on this and discussed it, and he's correct, I have some concerns over it. Not knowing exactly what the grant entails. Grant management is very time-consuming. You're not only looking at a grant application, you're looking at grant management, reports, budgets. so I don't know enough about the grant to even know how much time it would entail. As part of this, you know that we currently do not have our part-time zoning tech. So our planner and our town clerk hasn't taken on that position's responsibility. So not only are they doing their normal planning duties and their normal town clerk duties, they are also taking over the part-time duties of, well, actually, he was full-time when he was terminated. So they're doing the duties of a full-time zoning tech on top of their normal duties. So what I had them do is I had them write me up a breakdown of all the work that they are doing now and all their foreseeable work they have in the future. Without getting into a whole lot of details, and I can provide these to anybody that want to look at it. As you know, you approved the pumping station project. And for most of you, you recall how time-consuming, and I was responsible for it, how time-consuming that funding is for USDA and MDE and the monthly reports that are required. As you know, MS Forms, stormwater, and like I said, I have a breakdown of all the work that they're doing right now. I think taking on another grant, possibly of this magnitude, something has to give, and something might have to fall to the wayside that our staff is currently doing. And as far as the priority of the projects are, unfortunately, in my eyes, for staff's responsibilities, it isn't a priority. And not knowing where it stops there is, looking at your option A and B, is staff responsible for organizing those projects? Are they responsible for putting together the bid packets and overseeing any work that might have to be done? If there's a work that needs to be overseen, then you're looking at having to tax your public works staff, which is already extremely burdened as it is. So those are my concerns, that it's going to increase the workload for a staff that's already very busy and do an outstanding job managing their work and their priorities. But there's only so many hours in a day, and right now they spend 40 hours working on different projects. Like I said, I'd be more than happy to share with you anytime you want what they are working on. And then my concerns which I've shared with the mayor, and actually the mayor shared with me, is we take the grant over, then what's next? And I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Okay. Hey, it does call for us front-ending 40,000 and probably the 80,000 and getting reimbursed. So that would be another approval that would have to go through with you all. I have always wanted the, like I mentioned before, I put together a gift to the town of at least 400 acres of that ground up there, and it's always been for the benefit of recreation, but also as a piggy bank for the town. The water, not only the underlying water, but also the timber. And this moves from a nice volunteer project into us taking on a position where in the future we will be managing that up there. At some time there, Mr. O'Donnell will not be here to volunteer, and who will step up and it has to be volunteer groups. It's like the Heritage downtown, the Heritage community thing. That has to stay volunteer. We don't have the effort, the capability to take it over, and our responsibilities on that. We've given you the ground for volunteers to go ahead and grow your trails and as a recreation resource to our town, and also to economic benefit to the town at the Mount St. Mary's University. It get help there, but I'd like to keep it just as a volunteer and not move us over into this position. And that's the position I've always held and expressed. I think to Mr. O'Donnell that we need an outside source to run the grant, and we'll provide the land as we've done in the past, and everything to date's been done very responsibly. But It cannot be a town responsibility. We feel it would take two people to manage that trail if it's left to us, and also open up maybe some other responsibilities that we don't want to get into. That's mine's long term, and here, I just don't want to get another water thing. I don't want to get another trailer thing. Let's keep it. Excuse me. Keep it as a volunteer effort up there. Moore can jump in, or a bicycle company, or maybe another volunteer group can be the source for taking the grant. But I prefer that we not get into this as another water pipe running down the hill, a water company thing, or another trailer thing. It's just an awful big responsibility we're walking into, and we will be asked to. I've talked to many municipalities and other government entities that say these volunteer things are fine, then all of a sudden that volunteer says, I'm going to move on, or I'm going to do this. And all of a sudden they look to the town, the municipality, you take it over. And this is not just a hypothetical, this is an actual. And I think taking over the trails would be a mistake, and it would be a benefit to our responsibility to take the people down here, down to the town. That's a piggy bank for us to cut wood out of, and also, but we don't. That's the amount that our management responsibility there is stiff, just to do that, and that's my position. Thank you very much for letting me speak. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your candor, both of you. I appreciate it. I'll just kind of walk you through the process, and I'll kind of give you a heads up as to where the town's obligations exist, where the town's to step into this. I'm looking at the second page, and we have the grant amount is $40,000. The match would be $8,000. The mayor had asked me to contact the Moore organization, and I did in a formal manner, and asked them, what would it take for you to manage this? And they said 20%. So there's a fee related to that. So seeing as how that money opened up from the water line, who knows? But beyond that, I would rather see that money spent in town as opposed to an outside organization. Moving from there, in speaking to let's back up to the grant. It's what's referred to as a reimbursable grant. So I think when the mayor talked about worrying about $80,000, really, we would be spending $40,000. There'd be in-house spending of $8,000 in staff support for document management and such, and I'll be specific about that in a moment. And a partner on that I'll bring up in a moment, so that it wouldn't be entirely staff in the process. And after we had the grant completed and satisfied, the town would be reimbursed for $40,000 from State Highway. So we don't lose that money. It's not really $80,000, it's really $40,000, but it adds up to 80 if you're looking at it as a management piece. So a deficit of 80 and a reimbursement of, a deficit of 40 and a reimbursement of 40. So I think that's where the mayor's $80,000 is.
I didn't give 80, but I said 40, just for me, the 40 plus the 8,000.
Okay, all right. Okay, so maybe, okay. It may have been what I misheard.
80, no 80,000.
So I have a list here of the process, and I want to go through it really quickly because I don't want to burn the clock too badly. Okay, so we have a project specification. We identify what we want to get done. The next step would be a request for a proposal, an RFP. We advertise that. We wait for sealed bids to come in from a vendor. Based upon the price and other variables, for example, the quality of the entity that can create the trails, we evaluate their bid like any other vendor who's qualified, who's best qualified, and price point. We work with the state regarding a land review, which has already been done. We have a NEPA requirement, like an environmental review of flora and fauna on the property. Then the work, once that review is approved, and it has been already in the past for the trails as they are at the moment, the work begins. Okay, we have a designated project manager, and then upon final acceptance, we get reimbursement for what we spent. So I've gone through the steps in a very cursory way, but now I want to go through them in a different way. And this is through my conversations with the head of the RTP program, Cheryl Ladota, and what State Highway will do on our behalf. And I'll start with what Ms. Willits offered. We don't have to apply for a grant. We have been awarded it. There's no application necessary. So there's no time for that. That's been done. So, and that was done for free. The specification creation, the state highway folks would work with us to do that. And they would bring templates that staff could use in order to create that spec. And that would be done also with myself and other people who are trail users. And we'd weigh in and say, these are the best outcomes we would hope to achieve. You know, the changes we'd want to see or the modifications we'd want to see. An RFP, the language again would come from State Highway. They would provide that for us. Okay, so the town would actually have to like literally type up the document, but the language would be provided to us from State Highway. Okay, the advertisement we would be singularly responsible for. Okay, the bids, those would come from the vendor, so we evaluate those as a town. Okay, the evaluation process is handled by the town. It's not handled by State Highway. That's a place where they would not participate in the process. So we don't have any coaching. We don't have any piggybacking there. It's upon us to make the best decision as a town, as our community. Moving from there, the work area reviewed. The town makes the request. We've already done that. We have all the language. It's already been saved. That request last time came from the town, and we have all the language in place. We just have to take out those old letters and resend them with updated dates. Now, to verify that, we would speak to State Highway and the DNR, Department of Natural Resource folks, but in talking to State Highway last week, this is something that they confirmed with us. So, confirmed with me, I'll be clear, sorry. Once we choose, once we get approval based on the flora and fauna, you know, the land review process, once that comes back and it says that, yes, we can move forward with construction type projects, building trail, okay, that means the town would be monitoring the process, and that is a time-consuming effort, okay? In the past, the board had delegated that I do that on behalf of the town. So literally, I walked every day the trails, and I went out there and visited with the builders, or I reviewed their work. And I reported back to Mr. Haller informally and formally on occasion, based on his request. But the builder knew that I was there, and that was something the board had given me the authority to do. I don't expect that again. I'm not asking for that. If the board wants me to do it, I'm happy to do it. But that's how it was managed in the past. Moving from there, final acceptance, the paperwork related to reimbursement. State Highway said they would help guide us through the process as they want to get rid of the money, because once they get rid of the money and we get reimbursed, they are able to get more grant money and move the process forward. So we wouldn't be walking down this trail, haha, get it? They wouldn't be walking down this trail alone. There'd be a lot of hand-holding. And the folks at State Highway understand, and I really emphasize this to them, we are a tiny community. And we don't have resources that other larger municipalities have. So for the short term, I hope that addresses some of your concerns, Mr. Mayor, and board members and town staff, related to State Highway. They want to work with us. They want us to execute this. They want us to partner with us.
I have a question.
Sir.
We are working and partnering or in the process of dealing with the state now for our sidewalks and roads and bridge. You see how long that is taking?
I agree.
Process of that.
Sure.
So that's what they're saying. It's they're having a rough enough time doing that. And we're not charging that project. That's state
Sure.
project.
Sure. I agree with you. In the past, we haven't had those issues in the process when Trail Conservancy was getting their reimbursement piece. So,
I have another question.
yes, sir. And just one other item to throw out. There's a tiny build window. It's seasonal based on how we shut the trails down for the summer. So if I were to throw a perfect world scenario out, it would be a year from now, December through August, and that would be it. And it would be executed in that time window.
Okay. My question is, can a volunteer board be put together for this to handle the grant proposals and overseeing the project, just like the Community Heritage Day Committee does? It's a volunteer group.
An entity that would be allowed to do that would have to be a nonprofit organization like Moore. They're the only one that I see is qualified for this, and they charge us a fee for it.
They charge 20%.
That's
So
their
you
fee.
couldn't get a panel of just interested citizens in Emmitsburg
Or like,
that have different qualities or knowledge.
can it be
base?
overseen by them?
As you guys know how the panels work, we know everybody who would be on that board, and they're already volunteering. So there's not that type of management pool to dwell from, unless somebody, springs out of the landscape, and I'm not saying that just yet.
And, you said you don't have anything to pull from, the town staff is telling you they don't have anybody to do it either. We don't have the town staff to oversee the
Sure,
project.
no, I understand that.
You don't want to see the 20%, why don't you want to see the 20%?
I didn't hear what you said, I'm sorry.
You said that they would oversee it if they get paid a fee,
Correct. More would be interested in doing it that way, yes.
and they automatically said 20%?
That's what their rate is. I think they've done this before, so I wasn't aware of it, but that's kind of a flat rate they use.
So, 20% of the 40,000 would be
$8,000 in addition to an $8,000 match. So now we're creating what was a $48,000 expense and making it a $56,000 expense,
You say in the
if we're paying that.
recreational trails program, page 3,
Mm-hmm.
that the trails would be open for hiking and running, wheelchair use, bicycling, inline skating, horseback riding, cross-country skiing,
Well, thi-
off-road.
This is what they offer the grant money for. This isn't necessarily
Oh,
our
it's not
grant.
bu- okay,
This is
okay,
not
okay.
what ours has been spec'd for.
All right.
But these are all availabilities. We don't have four-wheelers, we
How
don't
often are the
have.
trails open to the public? Because I know hunting season,
Okay. They're open every day of the year, but to different user groups. So hunters in hunting
For
season.
trails
Right,
use.
but the hunters use the trails because it gives them inside access. It gets them in, it gets them out. It makes hunting quicker. And this is speaking to hunters, and that was a surprise to me. So every day of the year, someone in our community can use those trails.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for hiking, trail running, mountain biking, dog walking, it's every Sunday during hunting seasons. So there's no hunting. So that goes from the end of August, the first week or so of September, through the last week of May or the early days of June, depending on what every
How many
every
months is
year
that?
every year it rotates a couple days because of the hunting seasons are set by DNR. So we have September, October, November, December, January,
kind of avoid
February,
using my fingers.
March, April, May. Okay.
Okay, so 9 months a year, it's only open one day a week for,
for everybody.
yes.
And that's the same way we run our baseball fields, in that a team can reserve any field for 6 days out of the week. One day it has to be left open. So that's how that precedent was established.
Can you get a hunting organization to help fund this?
I've talked to one group informally. They didn't seem very interested. They already have to run their own organization. So then they have property connected to that and so on.
I mean, I
No,
can't.
I understand
keep
what you're saying. I got
asking
it.
The town, that seems way too much with everything that we're managing. That's a lot to put on them. I think that we might actually see the toughest woman in the world, Amy, cry.
So where would the 20% come out of, the 40,000?
Actually,
I want to know where the fee-
you're not allowed to pay for
The funding, the
the,
fee.
you're not allowed to pay for the management from a separate entity out of the grant. So it would have to be from another source, from a donor or from the community, and I'm trying to avoid that.
Looks like we might not be able to avoid it. I mean, would it be more cost effective for us to do the 20% and not let the town do that?
Well, I have a couple questions. Who actually made the application for the grant?
It was Trail Conservancy, and they had to step back because they had been pulled in some different directions with other grants, and they weren't able to meet their obligations. In the
Kinda like
past,
staff.
yeah, well, that's part of it, but also they, if I understand it correctly, they actually got more grants with other areas from different sources. So,
Okay, so then I'm also looking at this. So what financially, what the town's looking at is having to front $48,000?
I believe so.
And the,
6.
Well, if an outside entity does it, it would be 56. If it's the town with like
56 if we don't do anything.
right.
48 if you take over.
one
Well-
one variable with the 8, I'm sorry to play with that number. Volunteer work can be considered a match, $23 per hour. So I'll give you an example. This past year, and I want to see if I get my number. A raw number was We had 90 volunteer hours this year. This is our our lowest volunteer total this year, because the trails have been used so much, the need for maintenance has decreased significantly. Does that make sense? But
How much money did you make this year for beef added into cash?
if $1,800, that would have been if it were all donated or directed toward construction of a new trail. It has to be new trail driven. Now, the nice thing about this with the volunteer piece, and this sort of speaks kind of opening the door to Mr. Briggs, but I want to come back to staff. But with the trail piece, when new trail gets constructed or old trail gets revamped, it tends to draw people out of the woodwork who want to volunteer. So there's always a very positive turnout for stuff like that. So that can be organized, and I would be the one who would organize that, like I organize our volunteer maintenance stuff. But turning back to town staff, to your question about what would the town be on the hook for, okay? It would be $48,000, but potentially less than 48, depending on the variable of how many volunteers could come forward and directly work on the grant-related projects, or
And when-
project, singular.
And when is the work when is this work to commence? When would this 40,000 be expected? Because it's not in the budget,
Correct. Nope, and I understand that also.
and I don't know,
Sure. And I threw out the hypothetical, let's say, 2019, we're considering this. Okay, moving into December of 2019, we would start the bid process, because that's when trail builders typically look at RFPs and they formulate them. And then you'd hear something back the spring of 2020, and then you would have an execution through August of 2020. So we're looking at about a year out.
Have you checked with the Catoctin Land Trust? They have the easement on the property. Maybe they could manage the property.
The concern I had with the trust is I had a less than stellar experience that kind of trickled out on the Scott Road Farm piece. One officer of that organization also closed off the Scott Road Farm and wrote about it sort of with a bragging tone about, could you believe that they wanted to put trails on the Scott Road Farm? We're very happy to report it didn't happen.
That was
Now,
from the
it was he wasn't on the Catoctin Land Trust at that time, but I'm kind of a little gun shy on that.
Again, my major reservation, this is, I don't understand why staff wouldn't get equity hours for putting it their shoulder to the wheel, but again, we just had a fix on a water company thing that started 50 years ago, and we're doing a trailer thing that was done 10 years ago, and I just don't want us to get into something where we're taking over responsibility for the mountain. And $48,000 up there, it's the woods. That's what we want to keep, and I just don't want to. Somebody 10 years from now, why do they do this? We got to have two people that take care of the trails up there, and everybody expects us to. It's just got to stay a volunteer project, and I can't support us getting in line on that.
Sure. No, and I understand that. You've been clear about that. And that's why I'm asking the board for consideration.
Okay.
But to speak to your long-term issue, like the fear that it becomes a town project and a town management project,
Right.
in another county, there's a trail network that's over 20 years old, and it's continuously been voluntarily run in conjunction with the county government itself and with the state parks.
Well, and they're kicking in money for it, and managing sort of.
No, they're managing the land in general, but they're not managing the trails. They're actually leaving that to the trail, to Moore, that organization. So there's feedback. I'm not going to say there's not. And there's boundaries and saying, hey, you can't do this or you can do this. But we have that same process here.
But they have a responsibility that's beyond what we have now, and I don't see us being really capable in the future of really expanding our staff.
No, and I'm not asking for that, and I'm not looking to do that.
Yeah. But
Has the grant money been awarded to us already, or is it just there?
It has been awarded to the town.
to the town,
That's my understanding.
If we accept it.
did we request it?
No. Well, wait, no, I think we did. I think it was assigned to us when the Trail Conservancy stepped back from it.
So we
based
never
on-
requested, it was the Trail Conservancy, they did it, so we never been in the line of this before.
It's like someone giving land to the town. It's a gift, in a way, you could say.
Uh-huh.
May
I remember that.
May I ask a question?
Mr. Ritz,
Is there an expiration?
No,
on-
it's not. It's not exactly like that.
No, it's similar, though.
Uh,
Is there an expiration? Yes,
wait a minute,
there's
wait a
an
minute, wait a minute.
expiration.
We got, Mr. Ritz has got a question. Let him go first.
Is there I said there's no expiration on the grant, so if.
There is.
There is, so if we
yes.
don't act on it, when does it expire?
I believe the sunset on it would be 3 years
From which date?
from, that's a good question. I want to say, I believe September. And I would have to check literally your record because I'd spoken with the mayor about this. at
Of
that
this
time,
year, 2000?
Before I said anything to State Highway. So I'd have to check the date on that.
Is it this year or 2019?
2018.
So we have 3 years from 2000 September? So it'd be 2021
I believe so.
when we have to say, yes, we want
I believe so. I think we have to execute it. And I can verify that. That's something, I want to have a hard number. I'm sorry I didn't have that.
Well, this year we don't have the money in the grant, so it can't be this, and we don't have the money in the budget for this year.
Okay.
We know of. So,
where you get the money next year?
Can I ask another question? of
Yes, Mr.
Commissioner
Ritz.
O'Donnell?
Get the money
Um,
next year.
If we don't act on this evening, obviously we do have some time. Are you comfortable if we
You're part-time.
think about it to be brought forth to us again at a later date?
Sure, yes.
and maybe we could probably see if we can get a committee put together who wants to oversee the project itself. You know, we have 3 years to get it together. Can we do that?
I don't know. That I don't
It
know.
would take the burden off the town then.
Oh, no, I understand that. And I can certainly try, but I cannot guarantee it. I mean, I have, a pool of reliable volunteers from in the community, from outside of the community. We have about 3,000 volunteer hours from a variety of different sources. So it is possible and
But this is-
probable, but I cannot guarantee it.
Right. You wouldn't have to meet every month. I mean, the board wouldn't meet, but.
We do have a quarterly obligation, and we'd probably organize as a nonprofit.
Right.
Or we
Did
could
you
use
talk to
more.
the Indian Lookout Club?
Formally, no.
Okay, because I don't know if they're a nonprofit or not. They could be.
They are. I believe that they
They
are.
are. Maybe they would oversee it. They have a board of directors. Because they have their clubhouses right out there are going up towards the mountain already.
Visited it.
And a lot of them hunt on the mountain already. They could oversee it, manage it. I mean, it's an option.
What's that place, Indian Lookout?
Indian Lookout Club, yes. The hunting club.
That'd be responsible. Why don't you
They're-
work through them?
They're nonprofit, he said already, so,
Work
I
through
mean,
them.
maybe ask him if they want to do
Sure.
it.
I can talk to one of their board members tomorrow.
And we got a couple of years out here to get it done. We need to get it done before the 3 years is up, but it'd be nice to get it done in one, before next September or August or when your time runs out for the,
For the budget process?
construction.
Okay.
And then it has to go through us if we're going to match the grant for the 8,000, correct?
Well, we're the land holder, we're the land manager, so
Right.
yes, we would have to have a hefty say in it.
I didn't hear that last part.
We would
Say-
still have to come up with the 48 if we oversee it. I mean, if we don't oversee it and it goes through, but it won't be this year. And it could possibly be not next year, but we got to 2021. If it goes through, if.
Right. I mean,
But we're looking for another organization to take it over,
That's
to
right.
oversee it.
Then I support
And it'd be nice if we could come back with that first.
I think that's a possibility, or maybe at the future, when these other grants have been addressed, maybe we could have the town look at this.
Yes. I don't have any more questions. Anybody else have any More questions for Mr. O'Donnell?
No, I mean, thank you for
Maybe bring this,
together.
get the information together back and keep us updated on what you find.
So I'm going to go for it and hear the crashing of the carcass. I make a motion seeking the board to consider having town staff manage the $40,000 recreational trail program grant designated for the further improvement of the Emmitsburg multi-user trail.
A motion's been made by Commissioner O'Donnell. Is there a second to the motion? Motion's been made by Commissioner O'Donnell. Is there a second to the motion?
Can I ask Commissioner O'Donnell to restate the motion, please?
Sure. Okay. For clarity,
Yes.
I was rough. I'll agree. Okay.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just
Okay.
time of day.
I make a motion to have the board direct town staff to manage the $40,000 recreational trail program grant designated for the further improvement of the Emmitsburg multi-user trail.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah, I just,
Okay.
an hour ago it'd been better.
I ask again, is there a second to the motion?
For discussion's sake, I'm going to second it. I'll
Thanks.
second the motion.
I think we discussed it all out
Well,
already.
I
but
just,
is there
put it out there. Just give a chance to let it sit for a second.
any more discussion on this?
Give it a fair
Thank
shot.
you guys for your consideration. I do appreciate it. Staff, board, and mayor also.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any nays?
Okay.
Nay.
Nay at this time.
Thank you, sir.
Motion fails,
Okay.
3-2.
I appreciate
With a try.
it. Thank you all.
right.
Much appreciated. Truly.
But you can bring it back.
Will do.
All right. Next month.
It has to be brought back, presented differently.
I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, so just,
I'll work with staff so we
For future.
hit all of our marks.
It has to include the 40.
Okay.
The motion's got to do that.
Agenda items for the next meeting for January 7th.
Thank you.
We have
I
one
have
or
quite a
two.
few.
Oh, we have one or two from the night too, right?
Yes, I have quite a few for tonight. Number one, so we can get it out of the way, is for consideration ordinance 18-18 related to B2 zoning. That's gonna be your trailers. For consideration, adoption of the 2013 forestry plan. For consideration, approval of the wayside exhibits. And then I have 3 planning and zoning updates. As our planner is going through the code and as we're encountering different issues, we have some amendments we need to make. The first one would be a discussion and consideration of adoption of amendment to Town Code Title 12, Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Spaces. This will clear up a few sections in our town code. Currently now, we require people to come in and get a street closure permit if they want to close a street to do any work. However, we don't have it in our code that backs that permit up. So we kind of need to fix the language in that code. The next item would be discussion and consideration of adoption of the street, sidewalks, and public places fees policy. There should be a fee schedule that backs up the one we have at the front desk. However, we cannot locate one. Our best guess, it was last updated prior to 1999, excuse me. So we'd like to update that.
What do you mean fees for what?
Fees for, what are we thinking of?
Like we have fees for the
For the
pavilion.
street closures, and any, if somebody wants to have, like retail displays on the sidewalks. Currently, you're not allowed to. You have to come in, file a permit, and pay a fee. We just don't have the policy to back it up.
But I thought there's a policy that you can't block a 4-foot space on sidewalks, so no one does
But you
that.
can get a permit to have, like, say, a street cafe, say one of our businesses up on Main Street wanted to throw 2 tables out there, you know, in the nice weather, you have to get a permit to do that. If you want to, you have a retail store on Main Street, they want to set up a table outside, you get a permit. Because you can't block the sidewalk without a permit, essentially. So this just kind of helps. All these items are clearing up things that we already do. We just need to make sure that it's articulated correctly in our policies. And then number 4, discussion and consideration of adoption of updated permits and inspection fees policy. This fee schedule has not been updated since 2004. So those are the 3, 2 policies and 1 ordinance related to planning and zoning. Over the course of the next year, you're going to see specific planning and zoning ordinances brought forth for amendment because they are very outdated. And then I have 2 admin items. First one would be to announce the winners of the decorating contest. And second would be the Mount St. Mary's presentation on urgent care. Is that the language? Is that correct? Okay.
Is it the Frederick Health System? Is
Yeah, I
that the
don't
name
think
of
it's
the
urgent
organization?
Frederick Regional Health System.
Oh, the way.
Could we modify it to that?
Wait, what? I read it in the email.
Sure.
It did say urgent care. So how do you want it?
So the actual wording that we have in the document here is, hang on a second. It is, Health and Wellness Center.
No.
Okay. So it'd be a Mount St. Mary's presentation on a health and wellness center.
Should say Mount St. Mary's and Frederick Regional Health System presentation.
Good.
On Health and Wellness Center.
For all intents and purposes, would it be like an urgent care facility?
It would go
Yes.
beyond urgent care.
Okay, but that would be part of it?
That would be part of it.
Okay.
Yeah, part of this depends on what community, what does the community want to see there? At the minimum, we need urgent care. Radiology lab.
In the middle of it.
So Mount St. Mary's and Frederick Regional Health Systems presentation on a health and wellness center.
Yes.
Got it.
All right.
I'm done.
Miss Willits, I had one question. I missed it. The planning updates, the street closures, the fee policy, and what was the third part?
The permits and
Permits.
inspections fees policy.
Thanks. I mean, I know we're going to vote on it. I always write it down for myself. I just missed that part too. Thank you.
Alrighty.
Mr.
Any
Sweeney?
more for the agenda?
Can I bring an item
Hold
back
on.
for administrative business for a trail volunteer day? Scheduling a trail volunteer day.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Any more? Any more?
I don't think so. No.
Alrighty, here, I'll take a stab at it here. Agenda number 1 will be B2 zoning for trailers, coming back for consideration. Number 2 will be adoption of the forestry plan. Is number 2.
Yes.
Wayside exhibits for number 3
For consideration.
for consideration. 3 policies. Adoptions will be for Title 12 for streets and sidewalks.
Yes.
The next one was for fees and for sidewalk fees. And the third one will be for permits and inspections. And then we have 3 administrative business items. We have Mount St. Mary's for the Frederick Health and Wellness presentation. Trail Volunteer Day, and we have one more.
Announce the winners of the
Oh, the winners
decorating
of the
contest.
Christmas light contest.
Correct.
Okay. I need a motion to accept that agenda as,
I make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
I second that.
motion's been made by Commissioner Donald and seconded by Commissioner Buckman. Any other, discussion before we pass it? Anybody? Not now. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays? Motion carries. All we have to do, I need a motion to adjourn the town meeting, please.
I make a motion to adjourn the town meeting.
Second?
Motion's been made by Commissioner Blanchard, second by Commissioner O'Donnell. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you for coming to the town meeting for this evening.